Josh and Frankie. What a couple of dumb shits.
Hello, Primates! You found Primus Tracks. Congratulations! There are plenty of places to find us, not just here on this goofball podcast. We are at Primus Tracks Pod. No, we're not. We are at Primus Tracks on Instagram and Threads. We have an email address, which is primustrackspod@gmail.com, and there is a Facebook page run by one Frankie Berestein. I am Josh, by the way. Frankie isn't here yet. He will be soon. We had to get this one off the ground, though, because we are talking about Cosmic Highway today. It is the final track on Les Claypool's Frog Brigade record, Purple Onion. And here to be the human GPS on the Cosmic Highway, I need directions, and when I do, I always call this man. He is at KOGC on all the socials and the YouTubes and everything. He is the man behind Parasite. He's in a band called Nata, and he has a solo record out that is pretty darn wonderful. Kello Gonzalez, welcome back to Primus Tracks.
Hello, my friend. Thank you for having me again.
I would have you on as often as I can. It's always great to have you, pal. So,
it's a deal.
Done. All right. I'll fire that off to the executive producer, which is me. I mentioned a whole lot of stuff going on. I believe the last time we spoke, the last time you were on Primus Tracks, that is, many of these things were on the way. The Kello Gonzalez record wasn't finished yet, or at least released yet. Nata was something that had been revealed, and you'd been gigging with Parasite. But what's happening now in your sphere?
Well, my first solo album is out now, right? And what has me, I think, most excited is I finally have my first vinyl. That's exciting because I've done many CDs, but this is the first vinyl.
I've seen those on your socials. They look great with the black and white splatter.
Art on this format does pop up much nicer. I wasn't a vinyl believer, I didn't buy the hype. The truth about it is, I didn't have a turntable.
That's a big impediment to collecting vinyl.
It helps to have one, but I did have vinyls.
Very good.
I bought box sets. I actually bought a signed copy of the Saturated 7.
Oh yeah.
When they played Guadalajara, but I never played any of those vinyls because I didn't have a way to do it until now. I got my first vinyl, and I'm like, I better have one now to be able to at least enjoy my own.
Yeah.
So I did it, and I had a realization that I was missing a lot.
I actually was curious about that because as a pro musician, you certainly have an ear for sound. And so listening to your own recordings, whether it was a test pressing or a final pressing on vinyl, did you feel like you were missing out even on your own recordings?
I was. And to say the least, this is the album that I've listened to the most, obviously, in different formats and settings and pro and cheap ways.
Uh-huh.
And when I listened to it here on my studio speakers with the turntable, I was like, man, it gives the music a different vibe.
Yeah.
Sounds punchy but clear. Everything pops up in a good way, you know?
Oh, so you were listening to your own recording and found yourself saying, wow, I sound pretty good.
Yes. Yes, but in terms of the album, I was like, wow, it sounds great. Everything sounds better than what I'm used to listening to on my car, on CDs, the streaming headsets. I'm yet to listen to the other vinyls that I have: Rush, Primus, Metallica, Dream Theater. It'll be a nice experience.
And if somebody's curious about your vinyl. Where can they go to procure it?
With me, so they can send me a private message on any of my socials, and I'll see what we can do about it. Excellent. I've already shipped several to the U.S. I even shipped one to Philippines.
Oh wow!
You know,
you
several
might be
in Mexico. Well, I mean,
yeah.
Yes, it was. I was surprised that they say yes, ship it, no matter the cost.
That's excellent, man. It sounds like it's doing well too. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yes, it's been well received.
Good.
You know, and it's done in an honest way, and I think that's why people are relating to it.
I enjoy it as well, having listened to it a handful of times when it first was released, and I think it's time to go back to it again and give it another spin.
I think it is.
You'll probably be getting a message from me too about a vinyl in the coming days.
Perfect. I think you said 10. I have you on my list with 10.
That's true. We'll see where they're going to end up. Christmas is coming, of course. I have to plan ahead.
Stock up, yeah.
Stock up before the holiday rush.
It's a limited run, so I did only 100 vinyls, transparent black splatter.
Go get them.
Go get them, yeah.
Well, thanks, Ko, for the update. It's good to know that everything's going well. Gosh, let's talk about Cosmic Highway today. So this is your first go-round with us for the Purple Onion record on the last track. So being that we've arrived at the end of the record, I'm curious about your relationship with the record as a whole over the course of the last 20 years. And, of course, this track, Cosmic Highway.
I remember I bought the album right when it came out here in Mexico, and I do remember it was a rainy day.
Oh, wow.
I had a flat tire.
Oh.
So imagine that. So I had the CD spinning, and I was listening to it, and I was like, this is an interesting album. You know, that was my first thought. It's I felt it was not my usual Claypool.
Uh-huh.
If I recall correctly, this is the first record with the Frog Brigade as full of after the live sets, and I think it's the first time he explored a lot of sonic possibilities he had with that band.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the part that I think for me was a journey that I had to go through to kind of digest what I was listening to, because he did explore, you know, on this album. He did have a journey to go about and leverage everything he had now at his disposal. And I think that's why this song in particular is the one that resonates with me the most, because I think it's the most relatable to what he's used to doing on Primus or Sausage, or I mean the regular Claypool. You know, he doesn't have the much. I mean, he leverages the band, but it's more bare bones. It's a more classic Claypool extravaganza, I think. You know,
and it being the last track of the record, I suppose he was saving the extravaganza for last.
There's pieces of this song that are made for improv. You know, I mean, this is where we go nuts. You know, and you can tell, right? But still, I mean, if you take this song and put it within the context of Primus, it works. Because it's still somewhat of a basic song structure. Mm-hmm. The sounds you hear are more rock. You know, it's not as proggy or as experimental. It doesn't have that much of the other instruments. It's mostly bass, guitars, drums. This is the first song that I said I relate to this. You know, I'm familiar with this.
Yeah.
It took me a while, you know, to get the whole album, but I mean, after so many spins, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, I enjoyed the knots and the experiment that he was running, and the liberty I think also that he had. You know, because I think for him this was a let's go nuts.
Yeah.
You know?
He had carte blanche, but at the same time, it was an opportunity to make a statement about himself as a solo musician and songwriter. And it's interesting that you point to this one as being the familiar territory. I don't know that I felt that way upon first listen, but at the same time, my first listen wasn't in the rain, dealing with a flat tire, which may
stuck under the rain.
May have colored your interpretation of it the first time through, but it's of interest to me that you say that it was the most familiar in terms of structure, because thinking about it through that lens, I think this could be a Primus song. I'm not saying it sounds like one, but it sounds like it could be one with the voicings, of course, of the Primus guys. I think it would work. I have it in my notes, Holy Mackerel. Les said, these are the tunes I would not inflict upon Primus because they were self-indulgent and silly, but this record to me is showcasing a more mature exploration of songwriting and creating things that are rewarding for him and the listener. And I think these are tunes that could have worked, some of them could have worked with other bands, but he chose them for this one.
Yes, and he definitely leverages what he has. And what I mean by this is, he has the sax, he has the,
Oh, the vibraphone on this one, yep.
Vibraphone, yes.
Generally in this era, sax, vibraphone, and marimba from Mike D.
Marimba,
with some extra percussion from Mike, and then, of course,
and some extra backup vocals as well.
Yeah, he's got Enor on backup vocals. Skerritt jumps in from time to time, too.
The orchestration of the songs leverages all of that, and that's the one thing that this song also has. But it's more focused. It's a more, I think it's the most bare bones song of the record. It doesn't have too much going on the other instruments. It's more focused on the vocals that run with the bass. The vocals are actually going along with the bass,
right?
He just mimicked the melody the bass was doing with vocals and then run with it.
Yeah, and that's why he sounds good singing on this one. It's very, for a lot of musicians, me included, and I'm not much of a musician at all, but when I'm singing along to a melody that's already been established, I can hit those notes. It's there, and it makes it a lot easier for me. If I had no accompaniment, you said, hit an A flat, I'm probably not going to hit an A flat with my voice. But if I hear it, I can tone match. But I also take your point that throughout this record, he doesn't have to rely on bass acrobatics and taking up as much space as he did in a 3-piece with Primus. He is laying a nice foundation for a number of other musicians who can fill up space, take solos, and make noise, so that he doesn't necessarily have to. And so
I don't think he. When you're Les Claypool, it's the acrobatics. It's something you cannot avoid.
I think that's baked in. I think you're right. There will be some,
but it's definitely more focused on serving the song.
Yeah, agreed.
I think if I look at the song list for the album, I think the one song that has probably the besides Womola, that it's nuts. I think Ding Dong may have one of the craziest runs. The rest are more mellow or more song oriented. Ding Dong could be more of a Primus-y type where the song follows whatever Les is doing on the bass. I do have recollections because back then, when I had to go to work, I had like a 45-minute drive, sometimes more because of traffic.
Yeah.
And I remember I would always hit this song close to getting to my final destination. And it was a trip. I was done for the day, and I would hear the song, and it was like if I was actually through the cosmic highway going into my house, following along with the song, and then when it goes nuts, and then you float away, and I'm home.
Yeah. What a great song to escort you home to freedom and peace and quiet, or what have you. That's great.
It is. It calls your final destination. You know, I mean, it's like welcome home. You know,
I like that. That's great. We should talk about the track itself in greater detail. We have Cosmic Highway, the final track on Purple Onion, is track 12. It checks in at 7 minutes, 14 seconds. Your credits are as follows. Les Claypool, bass and vocals, of course. Enor, guitar and background vocals. Mike D on vibraphone and tabla. Jay Lane on drums.
Vibraphone.
Vibraphone, if you have the misprint version of vinyl, yes. And Jay Lane on drums, always a good sign. And guest turns from Ben Barnes on violin and Sam Bass on cello. And curiously, Skerrick is credited for saxophone on this track, although I don't hear any sax on it. Maybe we'll explore that later. Frankie,
maybe he got a case of the And Justice for All mixing.
Ouch! Mixed them all the way down. I listened really closely, and I only heard a couple spots where I thought, "Is that a background saxophone honk?" But I don't think it was. Maybe he did get the Jason treatment. Frankie's here.
Hey,
I heard you have some history on Cosmic Highway.
Cosmic Highway was premiered at the Fox Theater in Boulder, Colorado in 2001. But that version that precedes the release of the Purple Onion album a year later is radically different to the studio version on the record. Is a completely different incarnation. And the peculiar thing about those renditions, those early renditions of Cosmic Highway, is that often they would be part of a space-themed section that Les would devote during some Frog Brigade concerts to the setlist. So if you take a look at Boulder, that night they performed a cover of Space Oddity, followed by Cosmic Highway, followed by Walking on the Moon, and then 2000 Light Years from Home. So that's a whole portion of the setlist dedicated to space.
Do you have numbers on the performances for Cosmic Highway? I imagine it's pretty high up there.
It was on very heavy rotation with the Frog Brigade all throughout 2001, 2002, 2003. It was then resurrected by the Fancy Band. It then became a staple of the Fungi Band. It has been teased by Les prior to some performances of Crystal Fry with Primus. It was also performed by Duo de Twang. It has also been performed by the Les Claypool Fancy Brigade. It also became a surprise number for the Claypool and on Delirium during their 2016 leg of the tour.
Oh, yeah.
It's also been performed at wine parties. And the last year, it made a triumphant return in the 2023 tour of the Frog Brigade. So that's a very complex, very extensive life history for this number. And, of course, it's always been a major jam vehicle.
And you're telling me Duo de Twang played this?
Duo de Twang actually performed Cosmic Highway.
I have not heard that one. I have to track that down. So you mentioned it, Frankie. I do believe this track is partially inspired by some of those outer space tunes from 2001 on those tours. As you mentioned, 2000 Light Years from Home by the Stones, Space Odyssey from some dude named Bowie. Never heard of him. The other one, Frankie, you mentioned Walking on the Moon. Another one that came to mind for me was Planet Claire by the B-52s.
They would also do Planet Claire from time to time with the Frog Brigade.
Planet Claire, not as often, but Space Oddity and 2000 Light Years, they performed quite a bit in those years. So I would imagine this tune is partially inspired by those songs.
Correct.
But to me, given the overall attitude, I suppose, or atmosphere of this song, for me, this song is about anticipation. There's a really nervy energy to this tune, especially in the intro and the verses, before the takeoff or liftoff, I suppose, of the ship, during the solos and the call and response portions and that sort of thing. To me, the anticipation is largely rewarded in these parts, and it's akin to me as if you're on the road trip of a lifetime. I liken it to the first time my family drove to Montana from Iowa. So Iowa is more or less a flat portion of land. It's a lot of farmland, not a ton of trees out in the countryside. And then as we worked our way towards the Rocky Mountains and came around this curve, I saw the Rocky Mountains and these massive pine forests for the first time as a young man. And it was a life-changing experience to see this. The big sky country of Montana. Everything is massive in that part of the country. That's how this song comes across to me. But Kay, I want to turn it over to you. Let's talk about the song musically and what it brings to mind for you.
It's somewhat reminiscent of probably even a southbound pachyderm type.
Is that the drum
bass.
note?
The
You know,
persistence
like
of the bass.
I mean the bass, right? You know, because it's doing the
Yeah.
It's funny because he's not doing this. He's doing like muted drones or
Muting it, yeah.
staccatos, you know?
Okay.
As we talked earlier, right? The vocals following that same bass line, and most of the song revolves around that D minor riff. Even on the when it takes off, it's actually a D. And even when it goes into the solo parts, and I don't have the Funky Diva plugged in, but that's what you hear,
Yeah,
right?
the
And that's
envelope
the
filter.
Funky Diva,
Yeah.
right? When he goes into the
Right.
I imagine those with the Funky Diva. You know?
Yeah. Right.
It's even within all the flourishments around that one riff. It's all around that.
Right.
That's a song.
Yeah. It's funny because this is a 7-minute tune, but you're right. He's sticking to those parts. And as we discussed earlier, his, I guess, growing up or maturing as a songwriter, he's letting those parts breathe, but giving everybody else a chance to add layers to it to make a complete song. And so it's not overly orchestrated, and very few Les Claypool and Primus songs
Right.
are.
It's simple.
Yeah.
It's simple, and I think it has a lot of, no pun intended, space.
Yeah.
No, that's a lot of space. The vocals, along with the bass melody, drive the song, but it's very open. And I think it's one of those songs that I think the way that he put it together, he thought, this is where we'll just open it up and see what happens. The improvs and solo sections and extended cuts, and then get back, then get back to the song and wrap it up.
Yeah.
But the song, I mean, the core of the song is around this.
Those trills are fun.
They are fun. Imagine doing that while singing.
Yeah. I won't sing to you. Don't worry. Yeah.
Even the
Very Claypoolian.
very much.
Yeah.
Josh, would you please sample a little portion of that early version so you guys can listen to how different it was? Because I would like you to assess how radically the track changed once it was recorded for the album. Because we mentioned in the previous episode that this track sort of helped the Purple Onion album end on a bright tone, on a bright note, right?
Right.
Because
David McAllister too is a little dark, and then this song is quite upbeat. So it's one of those contrasts that the album kept displaying throughout since the beginning. But imagine if this is the version that they had recorded for the album, that would have been like a consecutive two-punch of dark tunes. Listen for yourselves.
Oh, interesting.
Actually, the bass is. I don't think the bass is following the melody.
It's very different, yeah.
Yeah.
Very slow, too. Huh.
And you know what? Actually, it's quite reminiscent of the arrangement they made for Groundhog's Day during the early days of the Frog Brigade tour.
It's plotting, just so slow. It just sounds like they were finding their
It's a
footing
march.
with it or something. Yeah. Yeah, more of a march, indeed. I certainly, and maybe it's just the familiarity of it, but the upbeat album version is more my speed for sure. Come to think of it, I've heard that before. Just a little bit of that March version. Keo's trying it on for size.
I like the album version much better.
Oh yes, I highly prefer this one. And then just to contrast that, I want to play about 30 seconds here of the bass part under the guitar solo. Keo, you played a bit of it earlier, but contrast the plotting version with this. Fun. I'd be remiss if I did not mention that when you listen to that part, it's great to listen to the bass and the drum pattern together, because Jay is once again emulating what Les is doing with the bass and accenting just the right notes so that they sound in unison. And Jay is, just hitting that hi-hat, that closed hi-hat with a little accent and really bringing that to life with that bass.
And one of the things, I didn't learn it, but I know it's around the same scale. There's a very proggy section before this, or by the end of the solo.
Yes.
Where the bass and guitar do the same, right? The same riffing.
Yeah.
I don't remember how it is, but
I'll play it for you. It's possibly for some people it's the highlight of the track, because we have the guitar and bass are playing in unison, and then they bring in the strings, right?
Which is not a very common thing to listen when it comes to Claypool songs.
Yeah, when it happens, it's more or less, I guess, special because it doesn't happen altogether that often in Primus, and so when it does happen, it's pretty satisfying. Mm-hmm. And then in the Frog Brigade, he's really reaching or pushing the boundaries, and you don't get a lot of that in the Frog Brigade either. Yeah, so I just wanted to play that part because I think for a lot of people, this is where the tune really takes off. Not to get alliterative on you guys, but strings, syncopation, soaring. All those S words come to mind.
It always reminds me of the release on Frizzle Fry. So it's kind of ironic that Les would tease this song before playing Frizzle Fry during Primus concerts. It's kind of the same catharsis.
It certainly, yeah, it is kind of that being let loose feeling in that part with the syncopation. So it takes it in another direction.
And that, that dynamic is also present in a Claypool Lennon Delirium track called Captain Lariat.
Oh,
and also Little Fishes. Little Fishes also has a similar catharsis to these songs.
KO, I know you play with syncopation all the time, being the lead bassist of Parasite, for example.
Lead singer.
Lead singer.
Lead bass linger.
So that part, though, it's really fun because he's doing something he doesn't always do, and bringing in those strings too. And you've already got it down.
Something like that.
We should mention, I don't know that we did yet, KO learned this song today.
Not today, a moment ago.
Not surprising.
Yes, right before I hit record, he said, "Okay, I'm ready. I've mastered it," and off we went.
But the thing is, as with the other songs that I've learned the same way, it's the songs I've listened to so many times. They're imprinted, and I mentioned this to Josh. It's the riff. I mean, that's something that's been something I would doodle from time to time without even, I mean, knowing it's that song, but never quite learning it just because, I mean, sitting down to learn the actual song, just,
yeah.
It came out and I'm like, oh, that's it. It's that song.
Yeah, sometimes it does. It just fully forms in your head simply through listening to it and visualizing it, I suppose. So we get that really great part with the syncopation, and then things wind down a little bit. We get about 32 call downs, and then we build up again with the envelope filter, the Funky Diva, as we careen towards the track's ending, which ends with a really nice crescendo, a really tasteful crescendo, I should say. And with, that call and response part is great too. Love that little part. That's very Claypoolian in and of itself. So there's a lot of great little things happening in this tune. And the last couple of minutes to me, I'm going to say this, and I say this with love, it's a bit predictable, but I think that's why it's so satisfying, KO, and maybe you can speak to that. It reminds me of when like a film or a TV show that you really love just sticks the landing at the ending. You know, it's the most satisfying resolution
What
possible.
happens with the song is that it resolves.
Exactly. The resolution is just perfectly crafted. Yeah.
It resolves nicely.
It very much does. And it sounds very simple when you are playing it as an individual bassist, you know, and so you can then get a chance to hear what Les was working with before he brought everybody else in to create it.
Yep.
And it just sounds great on its own like that. And it has a lot of possibilities to it. And I'm sure it's sacrilege in the Claypool fan community to say this song is too long, but I mean, it's 7 minutes and it's kind of a mini epic unto itself, even though there aren't too many, as you said, musical changes. It's all revolving around.
It's a simple epic.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to play it, you need to understand the Claypool language.
Yeah.
Right? But it's... I mean, I'll use the term simple very lightly.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's Claypool. Nothing's simple.
Right.
But within the context of his language, it is pretty straightforward.
And it's hard to pull off a simple epic. You know, like there's
That's correct.
3-chord rock and roll songs, I don't want them to be 7 minutes long. They should be 2.5 minutes long because they serve their purpose and they kick ass for 2.5 minutes, and I don't get tired of it. But
the thing is, what's the length of the song after the last chorus before it goes nuts? What's the length of the instrumental section before he comes back into the?
Yeah, that's a good.
vocals?
It's a good couple of minutes of the.
I think that's where the
fast-paced.
length.
Yeah,
Right?
and
The exploratory section with the improvs and the
Mm-hmm.
solos, and then it flows nicely. It's not.
Right.
I mean, you get to that part and it doesn't feel tiring because
feels
it
natural.
has a very nice flow. It also resolves nicely. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
gets down, and then you have the callbacks, and then it builds back up,
right.
right?
Yeah, and it's well done in that regard. Nothing sounds out of place or tacked on. I think the overkill of the call downs is hilarious. By the way, it's we know it's his we know it's his hallmark in a live setting.
But the funny thing about this, upon listening to it before a call, it's different this time because it's not the he normally does this,
Yeah,
but on this song they're slower, which is interesting.
yeah, and there's a lot of them, which is also interesting.
Right. Yes.
Almost as if he didn't know what he wanted to do there, so he just did that a bunch and went up another step or half step each time to start, and then brought it down, and then said, that's good enough. I do that shit live all the time. I don't know, but it sounds great on the record, and it portends to what's to come in a live setting, considering he does it a lot as his call down.
What I've learned about listening and learning Claypool language is it would appear those kind of things. He sits down, hits record, and whatever comes out, that's it. And he doesn't get back to let me fix it, let me make it perfect. It is what it is.
That reminds me, Kello, of something that you pointed out a long time ago, back when we talked about Riddles Are Bound Tonight. During the bridge, you pointed out how Les is buying time while he figures out what he's going to play. And that made it on the record, and we love that part.
Yep. When we were talking about, it was a track where the bass does the solo bits.
Yep.
If you listen to the longer one, you'll notice he messes up. I mean, there's some hiccups, but it gives it attitude. And it's not perfect, but it fits perfectly. And it's not perfect. I mean, you can tell that if it was anyone else, he'd go back and re-record it without the hiccups.
Yeah.
But the hiccups give it personality. Gives it the Claypool touch.
Leaving
Agreed.
imperfections in there makes it unique, I suppose, to them. Frankie is
those runs and those things. I mean, again, they're also not perfect, but they fit.
Yeah.
Because they're I think spark of the moment.
Yeah.
That's what came out, and I'm like, even when I was doing my album, there's bits. I remember there's a song where there wasn't supposed to be a bass hole. And I was recording, and it was recording, and I was going to record the part afterwards. Mm-hmm. And when that bit came up, I immediately started playing something without thinking, and that's the first half of the solo.
Oh,
that
neat.
first take, where I was not supposed to be playing that. So I can relate to how those accidents or those things can just happen. I mean, not thinking about it, just letting yourself go, and magic will happen sometimes,
Yeah. Those are those little moments that I think are memorable and just something you want to memorialize or immortalize, I suppose, on tape, on vinyl.
And if you want to re-record them to make them perfect, then you lose a lot of the vibe or what made them special, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's something that can be lost by doing that. I mean, unless your goal is to make the perfect record. I don't think that's true for Claypool Primus at all.
Nope.
Frankie, is Cosmic Highway too long?
It's not long enough.
Wow.
Could have been even more epic. I think by the time that you get to the catharsis, by the time it's been building up for a while, it becomes so mesmerizing and it's so enjoyable that you look forward to that ending, but at the same time, you would like the track to go on a bit longer. And that's why the performance that I sent you from that festival is really amazing, because it's very long. It's a very long rendition of the track.
Yeah, I have a 15-minute version of Cosmic here. I've got 15 minutes.
Mountain Jam. It's epic. It's absolutely epic.
Yeah. We should talk about the lyrics, too, because I think the lyrics are really important to the tune in the sense of it helps give meaning to the music beyond... I mean, because we're sitting here talking about the music and how great it is and how we appreciate the atmosphere and the musicianship and how they take something simple and turn it into something so big. But as far as these lyrics, there's a few interpretations we could throw out there, Frankie, and I'm curious where you land. Some that I have is we can just make the literal interpretation that we are engaging in space travel, which begs the question for me, you know what happens when you get too close to the sun, right? So if it's literal space travel, we're heading towards the sun, maybe it's deeper than that. The participants in this are not fearing death. I don't know. Maybe they're on their way to dying. Like maybe this is the light at the end of the tunnel metaphor turned on its head, and we're in a spaceship careening towards the sun, but we don't fear it because it's okay. Everybody wants to go. Another one, I saw an interpretation that somebody threw out there on the internet that these people are leaving Earth because they've depleted all the resources on Earth, because there's that since we singed the sky line in the lyrics, and then they go to the moon, and then they used up all the fun on the moon, so it's time to go to the sun. So I don't know if that's human consumption being the driver here. And then another simple one, Frankie, interpretation would be drugs. Could be a drug trip. Who knows? I think, given what we heard from the very slow version, live version that you provided there, Frankie, I would not be at all surprised if the genesis of this tune was Claypool just singing to his kids when he was driving them around or tucking him into bed at night.
That's why the tiny voices say, right?
Yeah, the tiny voices, right? So maybe he was driving down the road and the moon was right in front of him, or the sun was right in front of him, and he just started kind of singing a little thing to him and said, you kids want to go to the moon? Yeah, I want to go. Let's go to the moon. And you're just driving down the road, right? I wouldn't be at all surprised if this is where this came from, given that a lot of the lyrics on this record are from nursery rhyme and that sort of thing.
I mean, they were supposed to be traveling to the moon to colonize it, but then at the end of the song, it appears that they're going to the sun to burn up.
Yeah. You had too much fun on the moon, so you have to go burn up in the sun. And that could just be a metaphor for death. It could be a metaphor for
raising the bar.
Raising the bar, the flame. Remember in Tweakers, the flame that burns twice as bright, right? So you're going to the brightness. You could be going to the tunnel. There's so many interpretations, and it's not clear. And I think that is, I think that's important to this track. But at the same time, if we're on our way to the sun, eventually you're going to be blinded by the sun, and not. Well, there's another lyrical reference, Frankie, blinded by the sun. There it is. KO knows he's picking up what I'm putting down. But with that in mind, it just seems like you are being enveloped by something, and the music makes it sound like we're not afraid. We're not afraid of what's going to become of us. And so it's that ending is beautiful with the music.
It could be also some sort of follow the leader.
Could be.
I mean, whatever he said, let's go to the moon, and then everyone goes to the moon. Now let's go to the sun, and they follow him to the sun. Whatever
Childhood
happens
games.
afterwards.
Right. Yeah. Just kids playing follow the leader. And I'm not a maudlin.
Follow the cosmic leader.
Yeah. I'm not a maudlin person, but just thinking of that idea that we're going into the sun and that we're going to either die or transition or something. The ending of that song is beautiful in that regard. Like, it just reminds me of the Vonnegut quote, "Everything was beautiful and nothing hurt," and that was my life. But at the same time, it could just be kids playing follow the leader in space, which sounds fun too. And I would love to participate. And the lyrical structure itself is pretty simple. There's a lot of repetition. The lyrics are vague enough to give us plenty of ideas, as you can see, about what the interpretation is. And there's some sensible turnabouts. There's in the first verse, there's "Do you want to go?" In the second verse, "I want to go." There's the moon and the sun between the first and second verse. First verse says the earth is rather dreary. The second verse says the moon is rather dreary. So that repetition, but going from the earth to the moon to the sun. It's so close, and I want to get your guys' opinion on this. It's so close to me that it just feels like it's almost a parody of Jam lyrics that he'd really lean into later with Electric Apricot. And maybe it's just the word cosmic because he's got the cosmic flan in the "Hey, Are You Going to Burning Man" song from Electric Apricot. But it's, he's writing his space adventure song, but it just almost feels like he's getting into parody. It's close. It's not there to me, but I'm curious what you guys think about these lyrics.
With a track this epic, I see the lyrics as something that just takes a backseat. They are just there to fill space.
See what he did?
Yeah.
That's called copping out.
The main focus, of course, is the music. The music is what shines. The music is what carries the entire thing. And the lyrics pretty much could have been about anything, and the song would still be epic because of the music. So this is one where I don't read too deep into the lyrics because I just enjoy the music too much. And I think Les was just trying to end the album. Like I said, he was trying to end the album on an upbeat tone. So he figured that Cosmic Highway was kind of a cool theme to close the record.
What if Cosmic Highway is actually Lights in the Sky 2, and this is the person that's been abducted by the UFO, and they're just having a great time out in space? You never know.
All the merrier.
All the merrier. Kello, do you pay attention, a lot of attention to the lyrics when you're listening to Claypool?
I listen to the lyrics as part of the experience, I think. I guess what they do is lyrics and the vocal melody will serve its purpose for the song. And I think the context sometimes helps kind of drive where the music's going. In this case, I mean, I understand Frankie's point, but I think the lyrical concept of the song gives it the purpose of how we go about the journey of the song. Mm-hmm. We're talking about how, listening to this song in traffic, getting home.
Yeah.
On a rainy day with a flat tire. It's the whole thing. It's not just Claypool's bass. It's not just the lyrics. It's not just the melody. It's the whole thing. It makes sense. Everything makes sense.
Yeah. It certainly has that adventure feel to it.
I don't think. We could try and overthink and try to dissect the lyrical content, but I don't think there's any. Probably he came up with on the comic Highway to the Moon, and then from then on he just kind of rambled on and whatever made sense around that, and that's it. I think if you ask him, he'll probably just say, it's just what came out. There's nothing about it.
Yeah.
There's no follow the leader. There's no cosmic utopia. It's
What the hell are you talking about? I just wrote the lyrics, man. Yeah.
but they make sense in regards to the song, the structure, how it flows, and how it resolves.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's no overthinking on the philosophical expeditions of the mind here.
Wait, you don't want to talk about the nature of existence and finding meaning for it?
Probably not at this time of the day.
Fair. Let's leave it to the primates to do that for us. Oh, that could only mean one thing. It's time for Primates Takes. If you would like your takes about the track up for discussion read on the podcast, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/Primus Tracks, and I post a thread for every single track that we're ever going to talk about. You can drop your thoughts there, and I'll read them here. For example, Primatron John Shreve says, absolutely, the best Claypoolian song for me is Cosmic Highway. Takes me back to camping, to road trips, late flights, and concerts that were probably too far for a one-day trip.
And traffic.
And
rainy
traffic.
days.
See, there you go. There you go, KO. He continues, hearing my daughter attempt to sing along almost makes me cry since this song means so much to my family. Oh, that's a beautiful sentiment, John. There you go. It sticks.
Wonderful.
Edwin Allen Richards IV, our landed gentry, says, Cosmic Highway is my favorite song out of Claypool's entire catalog. It's a staple for every road trip I've ever gone on. Oh, the road trip theme is huge here. KO, your road trips to work and to and from work do count. He says it's a jam that will just never get old for me. It eluded me in a live setting for 17 years until I finally got to see the Frog Brigade last year, and I just about lost my mind. Eric in Australia says Cosmic Highway is a banger, which, like my other album faves, I focused in on with time. I was a whole onion guy back in the day, but peeled down to an essential core over the decades. Nicely done with the metaphor, Eric. Nick in the Netherlands says, Cosmic Highway is amazing live, especially good closing to the album. I love the call and answer jams between the members. And then he concludes with, thick jam vehicle, in the words of Frankie. Nicely done. And he spelled thick with 2 C's. Nick, by the way, not spelled with 2 C's, but he might have to change it now. David Crane says, what's the best place to drive a jam vehicle? On a Cosmic Highway, of course. A great album ender and an epic concert closer during many of the Frog Brigade shows last year. Mickey Waters, new to the Patreon, says the first half of Cosmic Highway just builds the atmosphere and momentum until the big payoff when the whole band comes in. Beautiful interwoven multi-instrument of bass guitar, sax, violin, and cello melodies jam session, although it's not clear if the sax is actually on that track. That's me. Mickey says, definitely a departure from Primus, less solidifying himself into the jam band scene. This may be the first and last of its kind in the Claypool universe. Interesting. Ryan Rashawn says, it seems somewhat rare that the last song of an album is the best one, but that is the case with Cosmic Highway. And finally, Frankie Brooks breaks it down as such. The perfect ending to a fantastic album. I always thought it would be a perfect encore, kind of like the pachyderm of the solo performances. But I guess it just wasn't meant to be. Brooks did it again. We're out of jobs.
Yep.
KO, next time you're on this podcast, it'll be Primus Tracks with Brooks. So have fun. He's a nice guy. Thank you all so much, Prime Matrons. Live cuts.
A jam vehicle.
Live cuts. The jam vehicle. Live cuts.
A jam vehicle.
Live cuts. A true jam vehicle. Live cuts.
A jam vehicle.
Live cuts. The jam vehicle. Live cuts.
What's going on here? shards of bone in my anus.
Oh, we got the Kello Gonzalez remix there at the end with that little bass flourish. Thank you. Frankie gave us 4 live cuts today. I guess 5 with the bonus one earlier.
And all of them are epic.
Some people throw around the term epic. Frankie tattoos it on everything he comes across. That's our first live cut is from Mountain Jam. This is the Fungi Bend, Frankie?
Yeah. My favorite rendition of the song.
Yeah, this one's 15 minutes, so get comfortable, everybody. Here we go. Not that part, though.
The interesting thing there is that you could hear more of the, I don't know if it's the xylophone or the marimba during the verse, or actually it was the chorus.
Oh, yeah. It's there. You seem like a Sam Bass guy, Frankie.
Indeed.
You're a fan. You're always specifying his
I
parts.
always highlight, his solos.
He's a lot of fun. Let's see. I'm going to forward to the 11-minute mark, and let's see what they're up to there. Goodness. Oh, it's still cosmic, that's for sure. He's doing Zeppelin. These two go together beautifully.
And also a D. That one also has a drone on D, I think.
Oh, there you go. That's the connection. You remember this part from the Zepp song? That's on the extended studio outtake of Kashmir, by the way. Very rare. All right, that's the Fungi Band. You know, I gotta say, Frankie, I like that cut, but it just feels like something's lost with the smaller lineup, or fewer instruments, I suppose. But at the same time, everything else comes through clearly. Yeah. So, what do you make of that one, Kello?
I like it. Sounds nice. As expected.
Our next live cut is from Frankie's Frog Brigade Live Selections fictional box set. Frankie's notes say, this version is weird. So let's hear some weirdness at the beginning. Yeah, man, this is the stoner rock version.
It's the early version, yeah.
Wow. Oh, that bass is much more spacey, too. Interesting.
He's using the boomerang reverse.
Right. Is this where he got the idea for Eyes of the Squirrel, or what?
Good point.
That is weird. All right. And then we're going to forward to a part that Frankie labels Seriously WTF. So let's see what's going on here near the end. All right, so we talked about some of those space songs that may have inspired this, but now I'm throwing Tomorrow Never Knows into the batch. I think that also inspired this primordial cosmic highway.
It's a fascinating genesis.
KO, what are you hearing there that's included in the studio rendition? What survived?
I think it's the backbone. It's there. It's just slower, much slower.
Much slower.
But he's also doing the.
Yeah. That strumming's pretty cool.
It's. I think it's the same. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens in the middle, but I mean, he even does.
Yeah. It's got to be hard to play at half speed when you are used to the studio version too. Huh.
It is, but I think the backbones of the song was already pretty much there. I figured that it was too slow.
Yep. It probably
it was dragging along too much, and I think probably playing it faster gives it. I mean, it's D minor. I mean, it's already sad, but faster gives it more of a. How do you say that?
It's I think there's more presence. You know, it's going to captivate an
more
audience.
Forward. It's more forward.
Yeah, it's gonna capture an audience's attention more and get them bopping. And if it's the show closer, it's probably gonna kind of leave them in a bit of a trance, but at the same time, pretty satisfied. Let's see. We have Jam Cruise, 2009, I think. Fungi Band again. Let's hear some build up. To the moon. He's singing so matter-of-factly. Oh, yeah. What's funny about that one is, you heard me say it, but he's just to the moon. That's the most chill vocal delivery I've ever heard from him, by the way. To the moon. I'm going to forward to where Frankie says there is ski rack and bass. Man, I like that dissonant honking at the start. That sounded awesome.
It's stuck.
yeah, they're in a loop.
Hit it.
That's fun stuff. Anytime Skerrick shows up, you know there's going to be some fun. Boy, that first part, Frankie, I thought, make a whole album that sounds like that. Let's go. And we're going to wrap up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the Fillmore, 2016. So 2016, this would be Claypool Lennon Delirium, correct?
Correct.
Whoa.
Interesting.
He just soloed over the part where it should have been a unison riff, right?
But even less, I think, cut it down. But even if you go back to the other ones we just listened, up through the end of the unison part, it's pretty much that structure. It seems, and up from then on, that's when the jam starts. In this, the solo comes in, and I think they just let him go, and Les kind of holds it a little bit, but from then on he knows it's no man's land. You know?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to where we're in the middle of no man's land. See what they come up with. Frankie, is this Money Mark?
Nope, that's Pete Drungle.
This is Pete. Okay.
Money Mark didn't jam.
Oh, that's right. He was already gone by now. And Paulo, having played this song a whole bunch with Fancy and Fungi Band, he knows this one, and he can put down a nice foundation. Let's go to the end for the build-up. I'm trying to get there. There it is. Thanks for those, Frankie. They sound good. Turns out
welcome.
Cosmic Highway translates live. Who would have thought? So we've come to the end of the Purple Onion record. It's been around for 20-odd years at this point. We've discussed it here and there. But Frankie, what is your lasting takeaway from the Purple Onion record?
My lasting takeaway from Purple Onion is that it's an album that has stood the test of time. It still sounds adventurous, energetic, and surprising to this day. It's the home for many staple Claypool songs that are still in rotation and will be for years to come. Everything about it, from the cover artwork to the inner sleeve and back sleeve Jay Blakesberg photography, I think everything about it is iconic. And it's a really, for me personally, and I imagine for a lot of people as well, especially if they caught the tours, it's a fantastic snapshot of a particular time in our lives. I remember getting the album from the record store, and it just takes me back to specific periods of time in my life. And for that reason, I adore the record. And just as a footnote, I wanted to point out, I'm sure that many of our listeners are aware of this, but in case that some of you are not, there is a Frog Brigade song which was rehearsed during the live settings, and it's called Ancient Mariner. As far as we are aware, a studio version was never recorded, but it is really fantastic. It's an instrumental composition. It was rehearsed probably twice, and it's really, really good. It would have been great if that had somehow made its way into the record.
Agreed, having heard the one existent recording of it, right? The soundcheck recording, yeah. Kello, you're Kello, how about your lasting takeaways from this record as a whole?
I agree. It's I think it's a good snapshot of what was happening then. Rainy night, flat tire, listening to this album just out of the store, and again, as I mentioned before, Frankie came in. I think this was the beginning of the exploratory Claypool era. At this time, he owned the jams and wasn't afraid of actually right around the jams and have more straightforward songs with more orchestral arrangements and leveraging a band like this. I did miss, upon listening to this album, at least the first times, the solos and the licks and the gifted bass licks at least, and but after a while you understand what the album's all about. And this was a journey, it was a different thing, and I think he made it a point for this album to sound much different than what he was done in the past. I think it's aged graciously.
To me, it's a sign of what was to come, and it's certainly pointed in that direction for subsequent studio releases, and what Primus would become too, when Les brought back the jamminess with him. So it certainly is important in that regard. But yeah, it takes me back to where I was in 2002 as well, and luckily it was a good time. So I don't mind looking back on it. I didn't have to do improvised vehicle maintenance like somebody, but So I suppose I should say this: Cosmic Highway, take the next exit. You've been tracked. And that's it for Purple Onion, Primates. Thank you all so much for listening and participating. Kello, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
You bet.
Thank you, Kello.
At KOGC, just about everywhere on every social media platform ever created. If you haven't seen Kello's YouTube channel, just drop everything. Stop the podcast now. There's only a few seconds left. Go, and I'll be hitting you up for a vinyl. 10 vinyl. Thanks again, Kello. Great to see you as always. Frankie, we'll be back with some inter-album content.
Sure.
And then
Can't wait.
Then we're going to get into some delicious Bernie brains. Primates, thank you all so much. We'll see you around. Later days.
Willie Mays.